Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Exploring Kodawari. My name's Luke, and my co-host is my fiancée Janke. We are both classical musicians, and this podcast will loosely explore the inspiring and motivating energy of Kodawari. In this particular episode, we work through the definition of Kodawari and our motivation for starting a podcast. The short version is that coronavirus rendered us stuck at home. All of our concerts and performances are canceled. It's now 3 months later, and it's unclear when we will get to perform again. This left us feeling stuck, unmotivated, and frankly, somewhat depressed. We decided that we needed something to keep us moving forward, something to challenge us, to help us stay on the path of growing as musicians and as people. And Kodawari was the idea that sparked my motivation to start a podcast and a blog. Instead of rambling too long here, I guess I'll just read a short paragraph from one of our first articles, and this will be linked in the episode notes. Here goes. Kodawari is a beautiful concept word from Japanese. Although difficult to translate succinctly, Kodawari essentially means pursuing perfection in a craft. It is the pursuit of an ideal, even though you realize you can't arrive there. Kodawari can be your personal standard and sense of professionalism. It is the pride you take in doing a job the right way. It is taking on full responsibility in a steadfast manner. Basically, it is the opposite of cutting corners. Kodawari is the energy that makes people approach life with commitment and attention to detail. It is the unwavering voice in our heads that demands hard work and striving, even when it's unclear exactly what we're aiming at. It is what drives musicians to spend countless hours in the practice room. It motivates a chef to make the perfect meal, a writer to suffer over their words, and a barista to craft the perfect drink. But it is so much more than that, and on a zoomed-out level, it is an approach to life. It is being the best you can be, even if nobody else will notice. And embedded in the Kodawari meaning is the knowledge that perfection cannot be attained, yet you pursue it nonetheless. Okay, so that was a short excerpt from our website. You can find the full article over at exploringkodawari.blog. Other topics covered in this episode include Carl Jung's circumnambulation. Try saying that 5 times fast. Watching yourself with metacognition, my experience eating at the 3-star Michelin restaurant, 11 Madison Park, freaking amazing, the Kodawari of sushi, confronting nihilism, and a bunch of other stuff that I don't quite remember right now. Most of our other episodes will be interviews, but we wanted the first one to be just us, a kind of meta episode about why we're here and what we're doing. Thanks for checking us out, and hope you enjoy it. All right, the first episode of Exploring Kodawari is live. I was going to say welcome, but you're part of it, so.
Yeah.
I would have put an intro already on the front of this, theoretically, so we can just get right into it. What made us want to start this podcast?
Well, I don't know. Like, we have a lot of conversations, 2 of us, I think. And I don't know.
The key is we just have to trick ourselves that we're not recording a podcast and we're just kind of walking on the beach or something, right?
Yeah, basically.
I mean, we don't actually plan to do a lot of these just us episodes. I think I'm more excited about interviewing people.
For sure, yeah. For me especially.
But definitely some of the times I think it would be good to do a deep dive.
Yeah.
Either into a topic or stoicism. Like if we both read that, we're both reading the same book on stoicism.
Yeah.
It's also an excuse to like actually read the book, you know? Because we're pretty lazy with reading books unless we have like a good reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Finishing books. I mean, reading is
I'm
not the
great
part.
at starting books.
Me too. I started like so many books this past year, I would say, but I don't know if I finished any
I
of them.
almost finished all of the Marcus Aurelius Meditations, but still technically didn't finish that. I think the fastest I've ever read in my life was Harry Potter.
Me too. I finished it in one day, the book 5, probably. It was 1,100
Order of
page.
the Phoenix?
Yep.
We should watch one of those movies tonight, by the way. They're on
sure.
HBO.
Yeah, no, I would love to do that.
So the Kodawari vibe is sort of like, I think it has more of a specific meaning if you were to like just look up a more strict definition of it. But I kind of like the idea of the Kodawari philosophy towards life, in the sense that Kodawari is normally like for a craft, like making sushi, or you make,
Coffee
for
baristas.
Or you're
yeah.
a chef, or it's or you could even be in something more like manufacturing. And even though you're making like machine parts for some factory or something, I don't know, you still make them perfectly. And you're the kind of guy that checks the parts and, oh, this one is slightly off.
Yeah.
Throw out the whole batch. We're making a new one. Even if that means you lose money or time or whatever, you don't compromise what you are aiming at, which is perfection, right?
Yes.
Aiming at.
Exactly.
Not that you can get there.
Yeah. And I think like people that have this like type of mentality, they just also like are completely aware that that is just never going to happen. Like we just recorded the intro for this podcast and then...
Oh yeah, you just heard it.
Yeah.
Pretty good, right?
Okay, thank you. So yeah,
it only took one take. That one take only took one take.
Yep, absolutely. Let's believe what you said. So yeah, for instance, I've been recording that, like I was just constantly aiming for this thing. Like there was always one little squeak, one something. Yeah. But like perfection, yeah, you can just never achieve that, I guess.
Well, so I first heard the term Kodawari, it was 2014, and I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast with this coffee expert named Peter Giuliano. I've probably shown you videos of him before.
Yeah, we watched that, I guess.
I forget if he won a barista championship, and yes, if you didn't know, there is a thing called barista championships. There's even like latte art championships. Like,
yeah, we watched some of them. That they just keep going on for hours, right? Like,
yeah, people watch the live stream on YouTube for like 3 hours or whatever it is. And it's literally baristas having a competition and making drinks, and there are these different rounds. So there are those competitions within countries and then internationally. It's so funny that there's a rabbit hole pretty much in anything. You just don't know about it yet. That's what I love about the Kodawari vibe when you zoom into a craft. It's like, oh, I didn't know there were like a whole group of people that are Kodawari about their mustaches. I met a group of gentlemen who they make their own
mustache wax or something.
Yeah, they make their own mustache wax, and like they're setting Guinness Book of World Records type mustache length, and they spin it out as horizontally as it can last with from their face. But they make this wax at home, and they were telling me about all the details, and I was just like, I need to go buy toilet paper. That's what I'm worried about. Like, you have time in your day to make and apply mustache wax,
Yeah.
But to each his own.
Interesting. I wonder what's the message that gives. Like,
well, I just mean I love the idea that everybody has, whether it's a hobby or a job, whether it pays well or not, they have something they probably really care about and attend to the details. They're not cutting corners.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So
even with mustache, this exists. That's basically what we're
I just
trying to say.
chose like a limit case, like an edge case that might be funny.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe they're far from Kodawari about their mustaches. They could be like, just like go in front of the mirror and take like 3 seconds and twirl it on their finger and put it out. Or they could. But this guy looked like he like used a comb and like really, because it was like a neat like slick mustache and it was really long. One of the guys was also like a witch, or what are you, like a warlock or whatever they're called.
Interesting. Did he name
witchcraft
in Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry? Where exactly?
I don't know. Yeah, but you'll still see them around town. Actually,
is there a major in the universities? I wouldn't be surprised if there is in America. No offense to anyone.
A wizard, warlock major.
Warlock major, yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the university departments started inventing those fields too.
Probably, yeah.
So back to Kodawari, I heard the term from Peter Giuliano, and he was on Rogan's podcast talking about coffee and other crafts. And Rogan is someone who's also jumped into a lot of rabbit holes, with hunting or fighting, or like he's a jiu-jitsu, like black belt, anything athletic. So he had a great conversation. And at some point, the guy brought up the word Kodawari. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting word. Like, that's really cool. And I remember looking it up, and it's the first time a light bulb went off in my head. Like, I think I'm already wired this way in some sense, because I've been a musician, for 6 years and practicing and majoring in music and performance in college. You're practicing like 5-6 hours a day. You're hanging out with people at night and listening to recordings and geeking out.
Yeah.
You're waking up early to warm up before class. And so you're just much more than when you're an adult performer. I think when you're in that stage, you're much more like just embedded in the details.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
And that's so much part of the Kodawari energy is attending to the details. Like you don't get lazy even when it comes to like the, practicing that little scale in that one passage that nobody hears, but you're still like, I'm not going to make it sound like
you just
shit.
can't let it go. Yeah, even though it's like, doesn't matter. Yeah.
So I heard the word then, and then I remember I read a coffee book like a year later and it popped up again, saw it again.
Mm-hmm.
I forget if there was another time, but just when we were sitting at home bored, it's been like, 11, 12 weeks of quarantine?
Pretty much, yeah.
And for musicians, that means no concerts.
Yeah.
I played one concert the past 11 weeks. The date right now that we're recording this, by the way, if you're hearing this in the future, is, what's the date?
That's a great question. Yes, it's June 1st.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Yep, it's June already.
June 1st. So we were in quarantine since, March 13th and barely playing any concerts.
No concerts because I haven't played anything.
By barely, I mean like barely playing my instrument and playing no concerts.
That is true.
My point was like, it's really hard to stay motivated.
Yeah, for sure.
When I pick up the instrument to practice, I kind of think, I could just not do this.
Exactly. Like, I don't know, like for the first time in 20 years that I've been playing, obviously when I was a beginner, I didn't have to worry about any performances or anything, but I just don't have anything coming up for me. Like, no concerts, no repertoire to prepare. So like, I just fool around for a couple of hours with my instrument and then just like pack it like I accomplished something, but I accomplished nothing.
Some days I pull it out, I warm up for like a few minutes and get the sound going. Just 2-3 minutes, and then I'll just decide to play through a concerto.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, at least I'm doing this.
I know.
I'm not in that mode of like, for non-musician folks, one of the things like to be a classical musician and keep up your chops and sound good, you have to just work on fundamentals all the time. So like the categories of skills that you need for playing, just sound quality in general, articulation, response of the sound, and just keeping those basics really sharp. And as you let them get dull in like lazy times like this, I've noticed that I'll play through a concerto and certain things are free and feel great.
Yeah.
But then other things you get to a passage and you're like, it's like a fast passage of 16th notes. You have to double tongue them or something. Yeah. And your technique totally crashes.
No, for sure. Well, I was just thinking like aging brings certain kind of maturities into your playing. But then the more sloppy you get with your technique, I mean, as you age, we don't do technique as much. There's some kind of
balance though between the technique like mindset and the part of you, I think the part of your brain that like it just enjoys playing music and lets go and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like the part of your brain that goes, fuck you, to the technique brain,
Yeah.
Like don't put those thoughts in my head. I'm here. I'm just trying to make the art,
I have a hard time channeling that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Just even recording the intro, like, when you're recording, especially you're recording into a device, but then you're also like recording into your own brain while you're there trying to play,
right away you're judging, like it's such a reverb of feedback, like it just never ends.
It's in a way it's almost easier to perform in front of an audience.
For sure, 100%. Like because you have an easier time letting go of things, but when you're recording something, it's just staying there, and then like you want to get your best take, and then that creates pressure, and then you start to stop at every
I
squeak.
think it would be fair to say that recording either for like an audition, that's the worst type because someone's critically listening to your audition tape that you send. I don't know why we still say tape. Never held a tape
in ages, I guess so.
So I found that the hardest when I know it's for an audition.
I know.
And when it's just a recording, I'm trying to think. I guess I've never recorded for anything other than an audition, right? Like I've never just set aside like the recital hall to record for like myself.
Nothing yourself. Yeah. Maybe we should do that more often. Maybe. I mean, I for sure do it, but like with my shitty phone, like nothing really.
It puts a musician into like the Kodawari vibe in a bad way though, because you have the ability to just hit stop and do it again, hit stop, and so you start getting obsessive and you start losing your mind. I think it's almost like Kodawari can be a bad thing.
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
You need to balance it a little bit.
No, for sure. Yeah,
like any quality of the mind, I think if they come in balance with some kind of counter force, it keeps it from getting out of control. Because then you become a perfectionist in the bad sense, like you're
It creates a lot of tension in you. Like I find myself getting lost in that for the past couple
Physical
of years.
tension.
It creates physical limitations, and then that affects the way you're playing your instrument, like the way you're doing your craft.
feel tight, and
It
then
happens in every
yeah,
craft.
it doesn't
probably.
matter what it is, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
physical tension is gonna just make you robotic, and then it's gonna make you feel weird, and then
But
Yeah.
I think the physical tension starts at the mind. I've
Yeah.
always noticed when my mind is tense, doesn't have to be about what I'm playing, just about something else.
Mhm.
I'm stressed about something I have to do later that day. My practice session earlier that day, my body will kind of mirror the tense feeling of my
Yeah.
brain.
When my performances and auditions are approaching, like I have like a really good mindset for a month, let's say 2 days, 3 days prior. I just cannot calm anything down. Like no matter how like much I try to control, my body tension or like my mind, like even though I'm like trying to convince myself, okay, my mind is at a good place, like I'm meditating, sitting down, I'm fine. Like
I'm meditating.
yeah,
I'm meditating.
exactly. Like you're force it, and then I can never control the body tension for some reason. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a me problem. Who knows?
I think your body is just an extreme example of that.
That is quite true.
More than
yes.
other people's. So yeah, I heard this term in the coffee world and I really identified with it. And then I started noticing it in more and more places as I looked around, like Kodawari. Oh, this coffee shop uses it as part of their mission statement. Like, oh, like this guy mentioned it in a documentary. And one of the things they mentioned when talking about Kodawari was the Netflix documentary, or at least it was on Netflix at some point. Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Wait,
of sushi.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
We should maybe watch it tonight if it's still on Netflix.
Sure.
It just follows this guy Jiro and his like pursuit of perfecting sushi, and at the level of detail that goes all the way down to like him going to the fish markets and choosing exactly the right fish, and paying extra for something if he thinks he needs it, to everything in between.
Yeah, sushi, I mean, I think from what I saw, like those mini documentaries and stuff is the biggest, like
Kodawari
energy. Yeah. Like even the way they slice the fish, like it's just so satisfying to watch.
Yeah. Well, you're just talking about your love of sushi at this point.
That's also true. Yeah.
I also love the fact that it is an energy. It's like when someone's in Kodawari mode, you can feel it. You know what I mean? Like it's they're attending to the details, their motivation to do things right and not just like sort of do it. It rubs off on you and you start wanting to do that too.
Yeah.
It's like a good leader who, just the people following them want to do the best job because they're just motivated genuinely to do it.
Yeah,
that energy spreads.
That's true. That happens a lot in orchestras. Like when you have a good conductor, and then you're playing under it.
And then everybody else and it spreads like
into everybody.
Like the coronavirus. No, it spreads like really quickly throughout the orchestra. The vibe changes and you feel people's focus. You feel that they're not being lazy with these entrances and they're not kind of together, but like the sections play perfectly together. They're listening around. You feel that when the human mind energy like syncs up to one thing, like in an orchestra, you can just sense it. And then everyone's more careful and attending to their part of the big project, like with more precision.
It happens a lot also in like a good masterclass, like, or that kind of an experience. Like if someone's teaching you, like you realize that there's so many details in every single second that like your brain hurts, like just so many things to think.
You're just
such
like
a simple...
storing them in the back of your brain. You're like, I got to process all this later, but I'm just trying not to forget any of it.
Yeah. It's a nice reminder to see like how there's so many details in such simple things. In again, like music or
yes,
a lot
that's
of the
a
other...
good point. So you mean like don't just be aware of the details in whatever you specialize in, but go ahead and once in a while go down a rabbit hole, right? Do you know what a rabbit hole is? Janka's English is Janka's second language, by the way. Isn't it pretty incredible?
Thank you. I mean, I learned it when I was 20. Yeah. I was learning it before, but I started speaking it when I was 20. Yeah. So
it was probably laying dormant in your brain.
I guess so. Yeah. I was watching a lot of shows in English with subtitles, but yeah. Rabbit hole. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. Yeah. But
literally it's a hole from which a rabbit came, I guess. But
I mean, I kind of guess what you mean. Like, like you want to research something and then you just start like writing that whole thing.
Yeah.
Into, like
it
a weird...
means it keeps going and going.
Yeah.
And in the Kodawari sense, maybe there is no bottom to the rabbit hole. and you just keep falling in, meaning your interest gets pulled, right?
Yeah.
And then it keeps getting pulled as you learn more, and then you see a bigger picture. You're like, this is incredible, and then you study more, and then you get this big view of sushi or classical music, symphony orchestras, and you start studying it. And then when you have a great craft, you can always zoom out and see the big picture and be like, this is incredible. We have like these instruments making vibrations that line up together in the air in just the right way to make, harmonious sound, and like,
or taste, or, for wine, for coffee, sushi again.
Oh, no, I know. I was just using music. I'm saying you can see the big picture example, or you can zoom all the way into the level of like each individual violinist and how they practice scales every morning so that they can play in tune, and appreciate like that all those levels have to exist, right? The conductor has to just, as we were saying before, if a conductor is great, they just exude this energy of like, I know what's going on. You can trust me on this journey, And when they're the opposite energy of that, the whole orchestra's like, shit, this is messed up.
What
Like,
the hell? Yeah.
what are we going to do?
That's true.
So another guy they mentioned when they first introduced Kodawari was this guy, Katsu.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Japanese like coffee person, I think.
Did we see the video of him? Like,
I showed you that video on YouTube.
He lived in America. Now he has a coffee shop.
I'll link it in the episode notes.
Mm-hmm.
He I guess worked in New York for a little while and then tried to bring specialty coffee back to Japan. He opened a place called Bear Pond Espresso.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, Peter Giuliano, was talking about it. Just like, let's say they open at 7:30 in the morning. He's there 2 hours early, perfecting everything. People show up early to coffee shops all the time to make sure the coffee's made, and that they dial in the espresso every day. It's like different, but he doesn't want to just like dial it in, roughly speaking. He's going for an exact thing,
Yeah, something in his mind.
And this guy said he doesn't open if he doesn't get the taste he wants out of it.
That's amazing.
He'll just be like, today we're not open.
Yeah.
I couldn't I couldn't figure out how to pull the great shot.
Well, I heard the pianist Martha Argerich, she would just cancel performances when she wasn't feeling the right way. You know what I mean?
It's
maybe
tricky.
it's a myth.
I can see it both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a myth too, but I could see it going both ways in terms of like, as a performer, you want to go like, I could never cancel. That's part of the energy that makes me find.
No, she would cancel so often, apparently.
But let's say like,
I would be like her. That's for sure. Like, I'm more leaning towards like, I just can't like get to perfection, and then I just freak out.
But let's say that. I don't know, for me, a lot of the improvements I made over the course of my life were I committed to say, I said, I can play this concert. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I got to fucking really figure this out, because I don't feel like I can't play the piece right now.
Yeah.
And if for trumpet, it could be I can't get to the end of it endurance wise, or it could just be I haven't figured out how to orient my tonguing technique to work on this passage or something like that, whatever. And it's always the knowledge that I have to do it that gets me to actually figure out the skill. And I usually figure it out more last minute than I would like.
Yeah.
But it's always happened. Should I knock on wood?
Yeah. Well, that's quite impressive.
Up till this point. But I feel like that's like the way my brain is able to make a crucial jump, or my brain body like system is knowing like,
you have to
you have to do it, and
you have to jump in the water. Basically,
if you stay stuck where you're stuck now and don't try to like take a risk to get a new technique going, you're gonna fail anyway. So you might as well kind of take a risk and just totally let go and see what happens.
Yeah,
and then it does work, and you go, oh, interesting.
That's true. But I think for her, like at her level of a pianist, like it's
was
more like
more
a
spiritual,
type of thing. I would say so. Yeah. But I understand what you mean. Exactly. You just can't forever run away from the things like that you're not entirely comfortable with. Like sometimes you just have to get into the experience to actually figure out how to do it.
Yeah. It's in the moment of having to do it that you fully figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or a couple of times.
You have to do a lot
like
of the work.
auditions, for instance.
Oh, yeah, sure.
For me.
Oh, yeah. You're never going to figure out an audition until you actually take one and you're playing there. For non-musicians, you go onto the big stage usually where like the orchestra plays, and it's just you, and then you look out into the audience and there's a big screen up and there's like 4 or 5 people, whatever the panel is of, that's a hiring committee basically, and they listen to everybody, and in rounds of like 10 people at a time, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, when you think logically ahead of time, you're like, yeah, I'll show up and I won't be that nervous because I'm just playing in a room and I can't see anyone. No one knows who I am. And then for some reason you walk out there and you're just like, your brain flips into like what I could call like the opposite of artist mode, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. Also, it's a little bit like Guitar Hero, I would say, playing in an audition situation. You just have to like hit the right keys at the right time.
Well, that's
a little
unfortunately what auditions seem to value maybe a little too much these days.
Yeah.
Like the perfection of technique, which of course has to be, it's a standard, right? And we're here talking about Kodawari. We're of course all about high standards.
Yeah.
But in terms of art, and art I think is a great balancer to the Kodawari vibe, like being a perfectionist, attending to the details. Let's say for music, that means playing perfectly in tune and having perfect rhythm and all of that stuff. Well, if you do that and you're not musical, you're not flowing, you're not being emotional with your playing, then, that's not great Kodawari, right?
Yeah.
Or, so I don't know, the word for me means like on the zoomed out level, not just the specific thing here or there, or like, cleaning the toilet really well or brushing your teeth really well. Like it doesn't have to be a specific thing. It's just like the net, when you zoom out on your life, like, are you being more Kodawari or more a lazy piece of shit, basically, right?
Yeah,
and
much.
I think I almost wanted to start a podcast with Kodawari as like a theme behind it. The energy behind it is it will keep a reminder to me that like my past self found meaning by thinking of like forcing my future self to be more, responsible, to be more attending to the details, to not cut corners, just to be less lazy, right?
Yeah.
Not just with specific things like chores and practicing for your career, your job or whatever, but also just for your personal development, like growing as a human.
Yeah.
We were talking this morning on the beach about this is, if you go to our website, exploringkodawari.blog, I like .blog.
Me too. .com was a little...
.com is like, what's com? What's com? Computer? Company?
I have no idea.
Could be
Never.
either one,
I
right?
never wondered, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is kind of mostly a blog with a podcast attached to it. So .blog. I wrote a few articles that'll be up there already. And the first one was just explaining what is Kodawari. And the second one was saying the idea that if you take the Kodawari approach in a zoomed out way to life itself, you're saying like, I'm not as good as I could be right now. So what should I do so that in 10 years I can be like, I'm a much better person. I'm wiser and I've accomplished, things that are meaningful and have put out good into the world and all that stuff. And so you go, okay, I could take a Kodawari approach to that mission, of self-development. And then I found out that the famous psychologist Carl Jung had a word for that. I want you to try to say it first.
Wait, let me try. Circumambulation?
Yeah, nailed it.
Okay, nice.
So this word, circumambulation, it's basically like, if you imagine a labyrinth, and you knew what a labyrinth was, right?
Yeah.
So I think we walked on one once, right? So picture the picture of a labyrinth where you have like the center of it, and then you start on the outside and you take these meandering, wandering pathways, and they eventually end up at the center. And it's kind of like a religious thing, I think. They walk around the deity or whatever in that pattern. But the concept is really cool because it's basically, if you approach that, or if you map that model of this circle with spiraling things around the outside, you can map that onto the self-development path. So basically, you're going in a direction, you're trying to improve, and at some point you're going to realize, okay, I was a little bit off in how I was aiming at this thing. I'm smarter now. Or maybe reality put a boundary on you and said, you can't keep doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe you were doing really well at the lottery, and then you lost all your money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like eventually, whatever strategy you were using to succeed in the world, reality will force on you a change, right?
Yeah.
So then you go in a different direction, same thing, right? Or you fail at something and you have to like go backwards sometimes. And there are
Take a
these
different path,
zigzags
just like
and spirals.
yeah, when you're trying to solve like a maze or something, same thing.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
You know, you just get stuck, go back.
Exactly.
Try this
yeah.
way. Yeah.
I mean,
That's how life works.
it is a
basically,
maze.
yeah.
If the picture, it's like a labyrinth. Make it a maze, right?
Yeah.
Any Westworld fans out there, this could be like the philosophy thrown into the maze part of Westworld. But the idea is, if you look at this spiraling and wandering, it seems chaotic and random at first, but then you realize it's actually circling something. And that thing it's circling, who knows what it is, but it's like that transcendent concept of maybe who could I be if I did my best, right? Like that your ideal manifestation of your personality and your, you know, everything you're born with, your potential. It's like the timeline where you maximally achieve self-development, right?
Yeah.
And you'll never be on that timeline, probably, right?
Yeah.
That's the Kodawari vibe. You know
would
that
say
you
so.
can't. You're going to be lazy sometimes. You're going to make lazy decisions to sleep in when you shouldn't have. And, you know.
Not even just that. Like, even though you do your best, I don't think it's like a straight line for anybody to pass to
Well,
anything.
Yeah. But I
Or
mean,
life,
like,
yeah.
I'm saying in the metaphor, like, would you ever get to the center of the circle? Is that death or something?
Well,
Because
I
what
mean,
would it mean to be at
theoretically, you
the-
should eventually.
Or
but
if
I
you're
guess
Trump, right? If you're like a narcissistic,
you'll
type,
cut through the maze if you're
then
Trump.
you just,
I guess
you don't
yeah.
even you think you've always been the center of the maze or something.
Or that. Yeah.
But I loved learning this word. I'm going to try to maybe read more Jung. Like it gets really like complicated, but just that concept alone, I'm like, wait, that might work as like a map, future map of life, you know?
Yeah.
So that way you're not wondering like, if you find you're going in the opposite direction in some capacity than you were 2 months ago with something, you're thinking the opposite thoughts. You don't have to freak yourself out because you go, yeah, in a circle, like as you keep traveling in a circle, you end up going in the opposite, like you're south and then north and then right.
Yeah.
So and you can just go in whatever direction your instinct is telling you is spiraling somewhat closer to the center. Sometimes you're like really close to the center. You can sense that sort of like, I understand life feeling. And then sometimes you're so far away, you see like the nihilism pit over there in the.
Yes. For sure. What's in the circle, you think?
Well, one answer could be, how dare I try to define it?
But
right?
also on a smaller scale, it can be your craft. On a bigger scale, it can be the life
Yeah.
itself.
Oh, by the way,
So,
you circumambulate towards piano playing. If you want to start learning piano,
Yeah.
you're going to, you know, make some kind of mental model of how piano works. You're going to practice. And then eventually you realize my mental model is limited. I need an upgrade. I'm ready to go to the next mental model upgrade, you know, like where I don't think everything is just like a 3-note chord or something, right? And you have to like then zigzag in a different direction. And even with those kinds of skills,
It doesn't
you'll
even
notice-
happen consciously sometimes.
Oh,
for sure.
this is mostly subconscious, I think.
yeah.
And then if you apply like some mindfulness and just kind of watch yourself more and from that metacognition place of like, I'm behind my mind watching this mysterious creature like go about his day. That's how I feel sometimes. Like I feel like, you know, what a mysterious like monkey I'm watching with a GoPro camera strapped to his head.
That's a success, I would say, if you can see yourself that way. Then you don't get too attached to your own emotions. And
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what so much of the meditation stuff is all about is finding that detachment, not just while you're meditating, but just make little cues throughout the day where you can just take a breath and step back into that space, something like that. Doesn't mean you can have voluntary control over when you're there,
yeah.
but you know, sometimes it just happens to you more than you
If
create
you
it.
get close enough to the circle, then maybe you can have voluntary control.
I mean, yeah. So what do you think's in the center of the circle?
I mean, good question. It can be death, as we already stated.
I only
before
said
you
death
made
in
it,
the sense that like,
it was not like a nihilistic death.
how do you reach perfection or your ideal self? It's when you don't exist anymore, because there is no way to be a self and be perfect.
I was,
You have to become
I
part of
understand what you
everything
mean.
again.
Yeah,
you
I was
know?
thinking of it more like not like a nihilistic death, but it's more like life is just part of circling in that circle. You just don't make it to the middle.
That's
Like
what
the
I'm trying to
moment
say,
you make
yeah.
it, it's the end of your life. It's
Yes.
like the circling is over. Like you, congratulations, that
'Cause
was your
time-
purpose.
Time
you know?
is moving forward. You have to go somewhere. You have to move in a direction.
Yeah.
And that direction, if you're trying your best to orient towards something. If you're religious, you might say you're orienting yourself towards heaven, right? Whatever that means to you. But you could just call it the ideal, right? The ideal mode of being for that individual. If you're aiming at that, you're going to find yourself in that spiraling pattern, I think. So what's at the center? It could be the ideal version of you that you'll never get to.
Yeah.
But you can,
But
you should still aim at it,
Yeah.
even knowing that you can't. That's why it's the Kodawari vibe, right?
Yeah.
Even though I know I can never be the ideal version of myself, I'm going to aim at it, and not just say I'm going to aim at it. I'm going to actually attend to the details that that come with aiming at that, meaning not cutting corners.
Yeah.
We all know people that cut corners, and sometimes they cut them in certain areas of their life, and it's like whatever. Like people are really bad with doing dishes, or I've met people who, when they do the dish, they barely. I'm not talking about you either.
Thanks for clarifying.
We are a couple. Like I could be just using this as a way to tell you don't do the dishes well enough, but no, that I've only caught you doing that once. I used to live with someone who was horrible at doing dishes, and they would basically just like touch the plate with the sponge like there's some magic spell that happens, and you would look at the plates in the drying rack, and they were just like still covered in like the oil layer and whatever food, and that's the opposite of Kodawari, right? And what I mean is like you zoom out to the level of like, how am I going to be the best person I can be? And zoom into the level of doing dishes. And like in all those places, you always get to a fork in the road where you're like, I could do the right thing and attend to the details, or you could be lazy and let it go.
Yeah. You and I always say, like, even if we were like cleaning toilets for a living or something, we would just do the best we
And
can.
when do
like,
we usually say that to each other? When does that thought come out of our brain?
I mean, usually whenever we witness, like, this is gonna sound so cunty, so I don't know. Like, whenever we witness someone not doing their job properly, like,
yeah, I'm saying,
even if like a
tell me
job,
not like a specific name, but tell me what's popping into your head. Like what kind of place would we be?
I mean, restaurants.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of too.
And like, I have a very specific example also. Probably we are thinking of the same exact,
where the lady just kept bugging us to kick us out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the first time I left less than a 20% tip ever in my life.
Ooh.
Look at me, right? I'm leaving 22% tips on our $50 bill. So we've always said this quote when we're out at restaurants, for example. We'll notice I've worked in restaurants too. Like I know what kind of corner cutting is happening. Do you know that expression, by the way?
I don't think so.
Like you're cutting a corner, you're running around. Let's say you're supposed to run around a field.
I see. Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, I was kind of
you take a shortcut, but it means you kind of fuck something up because you were supposed to run around the corner and you cut the corner out.
Yeah.
And maybe the corner was important.
It's
right?
not as thorough anymore.
Like maybe the corner is washing your hands after you clear one table and set another table.
Corners.
And people cut that corner.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So it's like if I'm, cooking something and I decide to, you know what? I'm not going to cut up my own garlic. I'm just going to get a jar of the pre-cut garlic from the store. That's cutting a corner because I know that if I used fresh garlic, it's going to taste slightly better. And if I'm, I think you have to cut some corners, right? You can't be like a psycho and be like perfectionist about every detail.
Of course,
then you'll be paralyzed.
Just chop everything that you're about to cook and put them into a container and watch. Unless you're you do that a lot.
Well, I think I just decide certain areas and I go, this area of my life, I'm going to bring the Kodawari vibe to. Mm-hmm. And then other areas I go, I have to, let that go a little bit because I'm very easily addicted to the Kodawari vibe, like too much whatever I do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's like the balance to the Kodawari vibe? I know for music, it's just being expressive and going with the art and all of that. But in normal life, I think it's just the idea of have fun.
I mean,
do you know what I mean? Like let go, have fun.
Also forgiving yourself if something like you don't live up
Same
to
energy,
your own.
I think.
If you don't live up to your own expectations once in a while,
especially because you won't ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to actually get exactly where you were aiming at.
Yeah.
So part of it is the forgive yourself thing, but it's also just the I think forgive yourself and let go is like kind of the same idea in the mind, you know?
Yeah.
You go, okay, I let go of it. And then you can actually say, I let go of it.
Yeah.
Meditation helps with that ability. You know, it's kind of like a skill. You can just get better at letting go of something.
True.
Anger is the hardest one to let go of usually.
For sure.
But yeah, to let go of the Kodawari when you know you should is sort of important too. So you're not like just paralyzed by.
Yeah,
you know,
paralyzed is the right word. I
I mean,
experienced it, I think. Like I would
In
say the
music,
past
you
couple
mean?
of years in music,
Yeah.
yeah. Not literal paralyzing, but yeah, in music, the past couple of years, I started having that. And then I realized it finally, thank God, like that I started zooming out a little bit from it because it's the wrong.
that's part of getting older as a musician too, I think.
Yeah, I would say so. It's
I-
like the
I
wrong
noticed a shift
motivation,
after-
also. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's not meaningful.
yeah,
Well, you realize that
You don't
being
enjoy
the
what you're
technical,
doing.
being a technically perfect player maybe used to be your aim in some way
mhm.
when you were younger.
Yeah.
And then you realize that you thought you were aiming at something great. And then as the closer you get to it, you're like, eh. And then something else starts developing the actual center of the circumambulation thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, being an artist in that deeper sense, it has nothing to do with how in tune I was or any of that, you know,
Yeah. Also,
technical stuff. And of course it does, right? Like
Yeah.
we've been saying the whole time, there's a tension there. Like the Kodawari tells us to practice the intonation till it's perfect. But like there's that counterbalance force of the spontaneity of being an artist, right?
Yeah.
That the sushi guy also has in there. He knows his sushi doesn't taste exactly the same every day. He's not aiming at the same perfection every day. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
I think it maps onto like the music vibe really well because you have that like that tension between the technique and the details and then the sort of stepping back into the art thing.
Mhm.
I just showed you the clip that I got reminded of this morning. There's a documentary on Netflix called 7 Days Out. 7 Days Out? That makes sense. They would do like,
Yeah.
and it means like they go to these different events like a week before they officially launch or whatever.
Mhm.
And so this one was 7 Days Out for 11 Madison Park, which is a insanely famous restaurant in New York City. But by the way, I ate there. You know this. I ate
Yeah.
there 2017, 3 years ago.
Mhm.
They opened up a summer house on Long Island out in the Hamptons, and my buddy had a connection, and I got to eat there on their test night. It's called Friends and Family Night, when a restaurant is like doing an opening and they want to rehearse through all the things, right? And you wouldn't think this, but like top restaurants like that, they don't just do a Friends and Family Night to sort of rehearse the menu and to make sure the chefs are cooking it and all that. They actually rehearse before the restaurant opens. They practice the skill of being a waiter or a waitress, of coming over and pouring the soup just the right way, of pouring the wine and switching hands when you switch guests so that you don't get in their way. Or they get to all the details. And they were showing this, they're reopening in New York City. I forget what year it was. What was your favorite part of that episode? I think it was episode 2 or 3 of this 7 Days Out show.
Yeah, this restaurant episode you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah. No, my favorite part was, I mean, how extensively they were training the waiters and waitresses. That was just quite incredible. And then also like
they were rehearsing them as if they're an orchestra.
Yeah. They were like, okay, like now you're putting this like food on with the right hand. Like, have you ever tried it with your left hand, leaning like at like whatever this degree or anything? But the most incredible one was, I think, the way they were placing the plates on the tables. Like it was.
Oh
crazy.
yeah, say that detail. Do you want any more wine, by the way?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit.
Can you? I don't want to. Well, I'm not going to pour it over the mixer.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Also, can you just tell the fine folks listening what we're drinking?
Ooh, fancy.
I don't want to. Your French is better than my non-existent French.
Okay, we're drinking Moulin à Vent. I guess that's how you read it. Moulin à Vent. Yeah, 2015. I guess that's it.
It's good.
Yeah, it is nice.
I haven't had a wine that tastes quite like this in a while.
I would say so.
I don't know enough about wine, but I can usually taste when I like it.
Yeah, good wine. Anyway, so yeah, basically what they were saying is
thing, right?
the wait staff put the plates like the same exact way, like that the label behind the plates are just gonna be facing down, like every single label.
Not
like,
facing down. So like
what was it?
if you have a plate,
Exactly.
on the bottom of the plate, it says like the name of who made the plate or whatever the label of the plate would be. And this guy, the manager, was talking about how there are details that they attend to that he knows probably no one will ever notice. But he said that by forcing people to attend to those details, you actually make them do it with more intention.
Yeah, that was
Literally,
the word.
right? You're intending to do something. You have more intention.
So they were basically
and it's
making
just specialer.
Yeah,
That's not a word.
specialer.
More special.
Making the writing like.
So that when
How do you
flip,
say that in English? Basically, I'm
they
struggling with
oriented the writing so that when you flip the plate up, you see the writing perfectly lined up with how you're holding it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Not that
Something
anyone's gonna lift their
no one
plates
would even
and check,
notice.
but
The lighting is low,
Yeah,
right? You're on your
exactly.
third cocktail and you hand the plate
Yeah.
off or see it get carried off. Are you going to notice that the label on the bottom was exactly perpendicular to your orientation? Maybe. Maybe if like you watch that documentary, you might know it, but otherwise, probably not. You'll probably be distracted by how amazing the drinks and the food are.
I would say so. But yeah,
Still
they were
to this
saying.
day, the best meal I've ever had in my life.
I'm sure.
And
I don't
it was
doubt.
mostly free. We had to like tip the wait staff,
That's
but
awesome.
friends and family night is just they rehearse. You order whatever you want. We got like a bunch of appetizers. I got like a roast chicken for the dinner, an amazing dessert. And this is what I knew, how I knew the Kodawari energy was with them. It sounds like the force is with you, young one. The Kodawari energy is with these 11 Madison Park people because I happen to have I've gone down the coffee rabbit hole pretty deep, right? I've had an espresso machine at home for like 8 months. I've had a lot of espresso out. I've geeked out on coffee. Like I have a lot of coffee equipment. It's just a thing I really care about. And most restaurants you go to, even really nice restaurants, their coffee game is garbage.
Yeah, but they wouldn't dare doing that. Like especially after seeing that documentary and
I
like
know.
how careful
But
they are.
you wouldn't
even,
be
like,
surprised at how fancy a restaurant can be and the detail that they overlook. The coffee is still a major detail that they overlook.
This, I would say, like not
Anyways,
necessarily
they had
fancy.
specialty level coffee at this place. My friend ordered a latte. It came not only in a beautifully textured milk with like a delicious espresso, but they poured latte art, which again, like the label on the plate, latte art doesn't make your latte taste any better. But what it shows is like, hey, I'm really putting some intention into this drink I just made you. This is not just a side. I'm not just making money here. I'm not giving you 50% effort. I had to put energy into learning how to pour like this. And a good barista, when they pour the art, they don't know how it's going to go. Sometimes it's kind of like sloppy and sometimes they nail it. And when they nail it, you can see they push it towards you in like a very proud way. It kind of gives them, they're at work, right? Maybe they really don't want to be at work, but at least when they pour that perfect, and I've poured like a decent latte art like once or twice in my life, as you've seen me with spilled milk all over the kitchen so many times, right?
Oh yeah, that espresso machine.
I'm like trying to pull the last thing through and then like the milk spills all over the kitchen floor.
Yeah.
So that just shows like, hey, I put like 5, 6, 7 hours of practicing at least to get the basics of latte art going. And then like the top-notch baristas pour things that are like perfectly symmetrical. The color contrast between the brown coffee and the perfectly white foam is like, it cuts like the new iPhone screen retina display latte art, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
It really pops. Whereas like cloudy latte art, it's like, hey, it's kind of cool, but I can't really see it. It's like the contrast is off, you know?
well, there are competitions of latte art, so
I
that
know.
explains. And then insane stuff like what I saw like in those.
I've shown
not
you
that I've
that
watched a lot
Instagram
of
guy,
them.
right?
Yeah.
What the heck's his name?
Kodawari of latte
I'll
art.
I'll try to put this in the episode notes as a link. Ben Morrow, Morrow, something like that. I think it's on Instagram. He posts all his videos, and they're just short 12-second videos of the espressos already pulled.
I would say equally incredible every single video. That guy really figured it out.
Oh yeah, he's one of the best. I mean,
Yep.
he's actually more into roasting now. I think he's like
Kodawari.
he's like I got to the limit of like mastering latte art. So like I guess I'll dive down the sub rabbit hole of coffee that is the roasting part, right? Because like he's already in the coffee rabbit hole, but then you get into one rabbit hole of coffee and you realize there's the roasting rabbit hole. There's the running the coffee business and making the shop and the experience amazing. There's the the wholesale part of like being able to like each, you have to get really good at all these subcomponents, but most people that work at these specialty shops seem like they're all like just personally geeky about coffee. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I don't think
Like, they're
they
at
can
home,
otherwise-
like trying to pull great shots.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing to start your day with. If you start your day with more intention with pulling a shot of espresso or making your pour over coffee or whatever, it sets you off on your day where you're like, the first thing I didn't just cut the corner and do the easiest version of it. I actually like had some really strong intentions behind this. I had to like focus and do some math. You know, you're measuring your coffee on the scale and getting the right ratios. You're using the right filtered water. You're paying attention to the temperature of the water. You're like, okay, yesterday the coffee tasted a little bit too bitter. I'm going to make the grind a little coarser, and now you have less surface area hitting the water. It's the pleasure you get out of knowing that you attended to all those details and you're aiming at something good. In one case, just a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But it means that like when I go to teaching right after that, I'm this much less likely to be lazy with a student. You know, as you know, as a teacher yourself, like it's so easy to be super lazy sometimes.
Yeah.
A student's just not getting it, and you just get that hopeless, like nihilistic, like I can't waste energy on this. But if you had the momentum going of like, well, no, I just like, you know, made this coffee and I could have just not done that, but I did, you know. And then you go to the next thing, you're kind of like, yeah, I'm going to do that too, you know, and I'm going to keep this momentum going of taking the path that's a little harder but, you know, more legit.
Yeah, with coffee stuff, I mean, it's another like a good analogy for like circumambulation. Your everyday struggle with like finding the perfect roast, like or perfect
The
brew.
perfect cup, right? The perfect coffee experience or something.
Exactly. Probably you never get, like, some days you get there, some days
You
you're
want to know
too
the
far
most
from it.
frustrating part about it? I've gotten a lot more consistent with coffee brewing, and I understand a lot more than I did when I first started. And I'm a little suspicious if this is true or not, but my memory is I've nailed coffee much more in the past, where I had those like, oh my God, this Ethiopian coffee tastes like lemons and smells of flowers, and I can't recreate that, right? So there could be an element of maybe I just got really lucky and did make amazing coffee back then, or maybe my taste has adjusted so I don't recognize how amazing it is now. That's like hedonic adaptation. Like you just, when you hear a Mahler symphony at the New York Philharmonic and you're 30 and you've heard a Mahler symphony there like 20 times, it's going to not jar your nervous system quite as much as if it's your first time and you're in high school and you're just like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing. And you're getting goosebumps all over your body, you know. So it could be that, like, maybe I am making better coffee now. And if my past self tasted today's, I would be like, oh my God, that's amazing. But I still think it's just fundamentally mysterious. There's all the skills involved, but it's just like performing. Sometimes you nail a concert and you think, what did I do leading up to that to make that concert go really well? And sometimes it's like you can figure it out, like, oh, I slept really well, or I was just in a great mood, or it was the people I was playing with, or I really meditated a lot that morning and my focus was just there, or who knows what it is, right? But sometimes you have no idea. It just happens to you. Same with like the barista pulling the perfect shot and they're like, wait, what did I just do to pull that perfect shot, right? So there's that mystery part to it, but you just go, I'm just going to keep following my instinct towards what's meaningful. What's that meaningful path of Kodawari, of just aiming at the center, knowing I'll spiral, attending to the details along the way, all the while knowing I can't get there.
Yeah, that's a good life model for sure.
Yeah.
I would say.
And yet, in restaurants is when it pisses me off the most to see the kind of people that are not doing that at all.
Or in anywhere in life, like.
I mean, it happens all the
any
time, but
point,
like,
yeah.
especially when you're at a restaurant, you notice it, I guess. Yeah, like we said. Anything else?
I don't know.
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Oh, I wrote this and then I forgot to do it. I wanted to calculate how many hours we've practiced.
Oh God.
Just as a rough calc. Can you pull your calculator out?
Sure. Well, it's been 20 years for
How
me
old are
almost.
you? 26, right?
26.
So, you started playing violin at age 5, right?
No, 6.
6?
Even 7, I guess.
And at what point were you like consistently practicing like an hour a day or more?
Quite early, I would say. By the time I was 8.
Okay, so let's just start with 8, and so let's say from what age to what age was it an hour a day, and when did you like up your game in like school to be like 3-4 hours a day?
Probably. How old are you when you're 6th grade? 12, 11. Yeah.
Okay, so for 4 years you were doing an hour a day, let's say 8 to 12.
I would say so.
Okay, so 4 years is so do 365 is 1 year, right? Because it's an hour a day.
Yeah.
365 times 4.
Yep. 1,460.
Okay, so 1,400, and then do for the other years. How many? That's like 10.
I would say
11,
there was
12,
this like
that's 14 years, right? Up till
Yeah.
now. So do 365 times 4
Yeah.
times 14. What do you get?
20,440
Plus the other 1,400, right? So you're as a musician, when you get to a certain age, and I did it with her because I started quite late. Like I didn't get serious
How
about
old
my
were you?
instrument. I was in like 10th grade of high school.
Mhm.
And it was by the end of 10th grade that I was doing 3 or 4 hours a day. And that summer before 11th grade, I was like, apparently you can go to college for music. I didn't even know you could do that. I thought you had to become a band teacher if you're going to go to college for music,
That's
but
funny.
apparently you can perform. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll take my usual summer boredom and just practice 4 hours a day until my face
Yeah.
hurts.
There were certain points where I was just, I'm not exaggerating or joking, really leaning towards 7-8 hours. I would say
Violinists can do more than trumpet
Yeah.
players, yeah.
7-8. I mean, that was
So
a
you could be
terrible idea.
you could be well up to like 25,000 hours then.
But then
if
there
you-
were a lot of points where I haven't even touched my
Yeah, I was gonna
instrument
say,
for months.
There's
so.
been like vacations where like
Oh,
for
yeah.
2 weeks I haven't seen you touch it.
No, vacations that like were
Violinists
intended
are good
for-
at taking long
Oh,
periods
yeah.
of time off. Trumpet players are good at just like chilling for the day, I think. But we don't
Yeah.
really take long periods of time off. Like I think my max would be 4 days. And then I'm
That's
like, all right, if I
incredible.
do more than this, I have to like make sure I have time on the other side of this to get back into shape.
Yeah,
Maybe
you know
like a
me.
week.
Like I haven't played for like 4 or 5 months after a surgery, so
That's true.
yeah,
That's,
like
yeah.
that was the longest I've ever stopped. But yeah, I don't know. Probably it's like 25,000 hours at
yeah,
this
20
point.
to 25,000 hours. And that psychology study that says like, it takes 10,000 hours to master
That's
something.
bullshit, by the way. Probably when I was around 10,000, I
There are
sucked.
a lot of addendums to that. Like that's just a rough approximation.
That's kinda
And it's like
dumb.
10,000 what kind of hours? Like watching SpongeBob while practicing or like being focused, right?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of like, conditionals there. And as we know, practicing can be like they meant 10,000 hours of that mindful focus
yeah.
practicing
I would
that
say
we
so.
know you can do sometimes, but
which
that
I'm
you
still
often don't
guilty
do.
of.
Not
Yeah,
you,
not
I mean
doing
us
it sometimes.
as musicians.
Yeah.
I can be awful at practicing sometimes, and I'll just like almost like purposely waste my time. You know what I mean? Like
too.
I know I'm like not accomplishing something great,
Yeah.
and I just keep barreling forward. Anyways.
I think that was one of my New Year's resolution. Like last year, I'm like, I'm gonna be efficient. Like, cause sometimes like you like take a new piece, like you want to tackle, and then there's certain points where you just don't even want to deal with. Like, oh, this is tough. Like, I really don't want to go there.
and
but
you just
like,
ignore it, right?
yeah, exactly. You
It's
just
like the
literally
room in your
ignore.
house that you don't clean.
Yeah.
Or metaphorically, the room in your mind that you're not cleaning up,
Yeah.
right?
I was very guilty of that, and that was my New Year's resolution. I'm like, I'm just gonna
That's a very
keep pushing.
Kodawari resolution.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I did, like, especially learning new music, like for my recital, where I have to play all contemporary new
Yeah.
music, which is just weird and not making any sense. Like
Harder to
sometimes.
learn.
Harder to learn for
The
sure.
Patterns are less obvious.
Yeah. Like, even though I felt like I was going to throw up from like how stupid it is and not making sense, like I just kept pushing because otherwise I was just going to postpone it forever and it
Yeah.
was never going to
So
happen.
I would say you just call it discipline, but let's just like put it as this episode. It's the Kodawari energy, right?
Yeah.
It's like your present self might not know the full details of what you're aiming at. You're aiming more at like a magnetic pull, a direction, right? And you know that you don't know what the full journey is going to take, but you know where you're aiming at. Like the short-term goal of, let's say, 4 months from now is something where you can stand there and go, all right, I got pretty close. I don't hate myself, right?
Mhm.
I have self-respect. And then along the way, the Kodawari vibe is attending to the details. you don't want to get from point A to point B and have caused mayhem in between those 2 points where everything that you interacted with got worse,
Yeah. Sure.
You cook a great meal, but you don't wash the dishes. It's like you just cause more chaos. Somebody else had to do the dishes, right? I'm not talking to you again.
I figured, yeah.
I'm talking generally.
Totally.
And so the Kodawari vibe is not only having that bigger aim towards something in your life, like maybe you have a 10-year aim, a 5-year aim, a 3-month aim, and maybe even a tomorrow aim. Like tomorrow I'm going to like run and I'm going to get myself back into shape and not be lazy with exercise or whatever the aim is.
Mhm.
You actually force yourself to do enough of it, even if you can't actually do everything. You do enough of it to foster self-respect.
Yeah. That is like one last thing. Like I want to say, since this quarantine, I would say I have this like certain routine. Like, I don't know. Like, I think it fits into the concept where I just want to do like certain types of like routines every single day. Like I set myself, okay, like I'm going to practice this much, or like, I'm going to work out, like do
You
Wim
mean
Hof,
at the beginning
this,
of the
that.
day, you
Yeah, exactly. I wake up and then I just like have it laid out. It just makes it
do you
so much
actually
easier
write it
to-
down?
I mean, I did at some point, but I haven't been really. I have this like app.
You know what's scary about writing it down?
What?
You got to look at that shit. You know when you did it and when you didn't. It's a
Not
lot
even just
easier to
that.
erase something mentally than.
Well, I have an app that's like, it's called Done, where you like make a to-do list, and then there are like, it's written like, you can write everything that you want to accomplish in one day, and then you just like click on them, and then they color, and then like you accomplished it, whatever. I haven't even looked at it in like a month.
And it's
I get-
psychologically, it probably does make you feel good to be able
Yeah.
to check
I would
something
check
off.
every
Yeah.
single thing there. But yeah, I've been trying to like do that since this.
I remember I
quarantine.
made a to-do list a couple years ago because it was like,
You still haven't accomplished one thing.
I know,
that
I'm going to
on
get there. I'm going to get there. So I made
To-do list
I made
that
a
we
list.
made.
I was like, I think it was like the year after I graduated from my master's.
2016, I would say
right?
probably.
So
we did.
I was definitely like, all right, I don't want to get stuck in like the I'm not in school and what's my aim kind of thing. So I was like starting to commit more to Baroque trumpet, and I was like, okay, that's make sure I like do some research for that, and like every day like that was a checklist. I was learning Turkish, so I was like, let me set aside 45 minutes to an hour at some point in the day to study some of that. A couple of things on there for an everyday one. And then I remember you added one day. You were like, make a dentist appointment.
Yes, Luke still hasn't been to a dentist, and we made this to-do list in 2016 probably, or 15 even.
Yeah, but in my defense,
Impressive.
I made an appointment for March like 20 something.
And then a pandemic
And then
happened.
the pandemic happened, and the dentist whom I've never met may or may not have gotten corona because he canceled on me. And she's like, "Yeah, he's kind of sick, so he'll get back to you." And I'm like, "Okay."
Oh my god.
So, but yeah, I've definitely found that making to-do lists at the very least means when you don't do the thing, you start to feel the guilt. Now I've been able to let that guilt for the dentist thing go, I guess, but it won't infinitely go. It's going to keep eating at me subtly, right?
True.
It's like, hey, you should do that. You should do that. You should do that. Like when you get a toothache at an inconvenient time, like, yeah, that's why you go to the dentist, right? Yeah. And that's why I think the point of Kodawari is you're not going to succeed. I mean, you'll have successes of sorts, but you're never going to arrive at the ideal, both because you can't quite define the ideal and you don't even know what it is, but also because that's just not possible. There's no perfect meal, right?
There's no perfect anything, and it makes me feel relieved in a weird way because
Yes.
otherwise I.
But
feel
it's
like I'm
easy
losing
to
my
turn.
mind.
It's easy to turn away from that and go, nihilism. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I definitely
you go,
did
oh, nothing matters.
there.
Did you ever have that philosophy when you were younger? Like,
Of
did you ever
course.
find comfort in like the thinking to yourself, whatever, nothing matters?
Well, I still find comfort in that idea sometimes. Like I'm like, whenever I get
But do
so
you think it's-
overwhelmed, I'm like, oh, we're gonna die anyway. It's okay. Not in like
That's
a
a
nihilistic
different
way though.
sentence. The "we're gonna die anyway" is a
Not
different
even
sentence.
yeah, but it makes
To
me feel
say,
very relieved.
Nothing matters. I think that's what.
Yeah.
There was a point where my younger self, if didn't believe it in the sense that I acted it out in everything I did, but I said it to myself a lot. I was like, yeah,
I never
whatever.
became
nothing matters.
self-destructive, that's for sure. Like I was always pushing, but like even though it was in the back of my mind, I would always still accomplish day by day what I wanted to accomplish for like long-term stuff. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I definitely
I mean, I never actually lived it out.
me
but
neither.
I definitely said it to myself enough because I was probably like half sarcastically just trying to like make myself feel better or something. And it does work like that sometimes, right? You go like, shit, we were supposed to do this, whatever. And you go, nothing matters. And in a sense, you're saying like, whatever, it already happened in the past. We got to move forward. The nihilism part would say like, whatever, and the future, whatever too. Like, I'm not even going to aim up because no aim has any meaning above any other aim. Like, nothing matters.
Yeah, and then you get stuck in that pattern, and then you usually don't really.
I think it's a pretty dangerous thing. And I started to notice the nihilism energy creeping up in my own mind during the quarantine, because like, again, you don't have those short-term goals to work towards.
Yeah, that's why I started setting myself those routines. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't have to accomplish them. It's just they have to be there to keep me sane, or like not.
But you do have to accomplish them enough. You forgive yourself when you skip a day, but if you skipped 2 weeks, you would be like, I fucking, I'm a piece of shit. You know, like, you would have that negative feeling coming up. And that's sort of why I wanted to start a podcast too, is just like, I wanted that, like I said in the beginning, I suppose I wanted that excuse to like try to keep myself developing, right? Mm-hmm. To be like, hey, we really wanted to do an episode on this book or whatever. Like, I know my normal self would get lazy before finishing it, but if I set a good enough, meaningful enough goal ahead of time,
or a topic to research,
I will do it.
I would definitely
push what I mean?
Myself as well.
Yeah, it's just a good excuse, because you're not always going to be some perfect disciplined creature that aims at Kodawari. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need to sort of aim at meaningful things so that you feel good about doing the Kodawari vibe. Something like that. This is episode 1. By episode like 5, we'll just be like, yeah, fuck the Kodawari thing. Like, we're just getting drunk. You know?
Who knows? We're also experimenting. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not entirely. Sometimes I just like, I don't know.
We'll do an honest episode where we say how much we're not Kodawari and plenty of things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I definitely don't want to give the impression like we're all these like perfect Kodawari.
Yeah,
people.
like as we were talking, I was thinking like, I wonder if people are thinking we're these like weird pretentious creatures. We're like those, sloths. Like, just so you know, like our lifestyle.
I'm more
like
a sloth than a human.
Yeah. And then like with all that like introduction music, I'm like, oh, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. Like, I'm pretty much
it's
like sloth like. Yeah,
I think it's an aim.
Certain, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, definitely aim. Like, I am very humbly accepting that. Yeah. I am nowhere near in any fields to be like approaching that, except my own. Like, I think as a violin player, like I always have that standard. But I think in anything else,
when you do that vibe in one specific domain, like music or whatever your field or craft is, it alerts you that those similar rabbit holes exist in all these other fields, and the development is quite similar. You know, like it's a human mind figuring out how something works. So I have great conversations with people from different crafts, because I'll talk about like musical harmony, and they're talking about balancing flavors in a cocktail or something. And you realize like a cocktail is like these 4 tones that you have to balance in some way, right? So there's all that overlap that I find really cool too.
Yeah.
But yeah, by no means am I trying to suggest, if you got into the end of the episode, by no means am I suggesting that we are like Kodawari people. But I think you can always be more, right? That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
You're going to fail, and you can always just keep aiming at better.
Wherever you are, you try to aim for always being more.
Chances are you're more Kodawari than us.
For sure.
At least recently.
Yeah, it's a nice, experiment for us, for both of us.
Yeah.
Basically, that's why we started it.
I really want to experiment with, like, if I have like the motivation, like, to do an episode or to write like an article about something, right? It will make me more motivated, and just, it'll feel better to do the thing, you know, to read a book knowing I have at least a reason. Like, I kind of view writing articles online as just like a way to make my own thoughts somewhere. And if someone wants to look at them, fine. But it like makes me feel better every time I write something and organize that little slice of my mind into not a fuzzy thing, but I've kind of, when you're forced to write something, you make it exact, right? It's more precise. You zoom into the details, so you got the big picture all the way into the details. Just makes you feel better, I think. Yeah. I got nothing else to say. You?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for agreeing to do this experiment with me.
Yeah. I mean, thank you
Thanks, and thank you, listener, for agreeing to do the experiment of listening to us. Bye.
God.
All right, thanks for listening to this episode of Exploring Kodawari. If you enjoyed it, we hope you'll consider sharing it on social media and with friends. You can also help us out by leaving a rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those help us more than you would think. And if you'd like to help us out in a more substantial way, consider going over to our website to make a donation through PayPal. Links are in the episode notes for this. You can do this as a one-time donation or a recurring monthly donation. All of that support will help us to set aside time in order to create content for the podcast and the blog. And finally, please get in touch with us and say hi, either on social media or privately through email. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.